source code. And this is the build that you're getting on your system matches what was built in the Fedora release infrastructure or release engineering. Next slide, please. I'm going to kind of hurry through this one a little bit, but distribution CI, or continuous integration, I think at a high level here, this one is that you can leverage these Linux distributions, have ways to test their software. Sometimes they even do community, like there's ways for community members to test on and give feedback on an update before it lands in the distro. So you can get that advantage of getting more testing, and if something's broken on, every Fedora user can't use the software, then you'll be able to know that when you're building the package instead of when someone says, hey, this isn't working for me. And then there's also a brand building aspect. So packaging your software for Linux, not just for Fedora, but any distro, I think, gives you more exposure to the software. There's more people who can just in one click install your application without having to go through different ways of compiling it or building it or pulling in different dependencies. It's just right there for them. And then also, you can get some open source street cred because there's a lot of folks who are engaging in this community, and if you're doing work there, you're getting your name and you're getting more visible in the community. Next slide, please. There are some downsides that are worth mentioning, or might be challenges or constraints. One thing is at the time to release, you're probably going to be adding like 5 days to your release timeline when you're shipping new software, because there is an opportunity for the community to test and update and share feedback before it goes to all the users of the Linux, of Fedora or CentOS. And it also, however, if you do really want the software, there are ways you can get it before it gets in the repository. But generally, before everyone gets it, there's a test period, a test phase. There's also no, freewheeling. There are some packaging guidelines that you are required to follow. That's why there's that peer review process I mentioned earlier. Again, on EPEL, so this one there's like the CentOS Stream and Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which are not so fast on releasing new features. They're focused more on stability and security and long-term support. And these ones, there's a little different policies for that one because you're often building with older developer tools and things that aren't as cutting edge and leading in the space. So if you want to ship your software into an enterprise Linux distro, you might have to take extra steps to do that versus what you do for Fedora. And then lastly, metrics. As of now, it's not possible to count how many times your package gets installed on an operating system. Next slide, please. So we are a little tight on time, or one back, one forward. Perfect. So there's a flow here. I'm just going to summarize this in short. So Fedora Linux, when we talk about upstream and downstream, just get a show of hands. How many of you have heard that term, upstream, downstream, before? So just a few of you, I see. Awesome. So what we mean by that is when you have software that gets forked or gets built off of something else, it becomes kind of like a flowing river, right? The changes that are going upstream are flowing down the river to all these other projects and dependencies that rely on it. So in the case of these three distros, we're talking Fedora, CentOS Stream, and RHEL. Fedora is as upstream as you get. Fedora is original. Fedora is not based on anything else. It's all its own. And it moves pretty fast on 6-month release cycles. Then there's CentOS Stream, which is kind of the emerging enterprise Linux. So its packages are maybe a little bit more configured or shaped for the enterprise, more security, or maybe slightly older versions if it's not so cutting edge technology. But CentOS Stream still has a rolling release model. So even though the packages are more enterprise grade, it's always moving at a little bit of a faster pace because how it flows into Red Hat Enterprise Linux is CentOS Stream is always the next release of RHEL. So CentOS Stream, so we're coming up next year will be RHEL, and CentOS Stream will have version 10. So first, CentOS Stream will be version 10, and that's where all the kind of configuration and the packages are going to get built. And once that becomes really stable, then it will become the next Red Hat Enterprise Linux release. So whenever you're packaging software in this ecosystem, even if you're just doing it in Fedora, there's all these opportunities for your software, your tools to get pulled into this much even larger ecosystem. Like Red Hat Enterprise Linux is something, whenever you're using AWS, Google Azure, and Google Cloud and Microsoft Azure, a lot of times they're building Linux that's in some form based on that Red Hat Enterprise Linux, if it's not that. So you can get your things into this whole ecosystem just by putting your stuff in Fedora. Next slide, please. We're probably going to use the rest of our time here on this last activity. How would you actually contribute and get involved to this project? From that earlier activity, there were some pieces in marketing and documentation that were there. I've been talking a lot around packaging and kind of that software piece, but there's so many things you can do, as well as software and engineering and packaging. There's a whole world of things that you can do beyond that. Next slide, please. So this is your primer slide, and I know this might be a lot to unpack, so we'll slim it down here before we get to the activity. But just in the Fedora project, this is a kind of a mind map of all the different teams and activities and things that are happening in Fedora. People who are working on different things in the project. So you'll see kind of in the center here, you have the project leadership. On the left side, you have the engineering steering committee, which is kind of the head of all the engineering sides of the project. On the right side, we often call in Fedora the non-engineering parts of the project, we call them Mindshare, or Mindshare activities, or Mindshare projects. So we have the Mindshare committee, which is kind of the governance head of that side of the project. And we have things from design to community operations and community management. We have mentored projects with Outreachy. There's user Q&A and moderation on our discussion forum, and marketing, websites and applications. There's a whole range of things that are here. Don't worry, you don't have to memorize this one for the next activity, because I know it's a lot. Next slide, please. So for the rest of our time that we have here, we're going to, you could mix it up a little bit, get to know some other people too, or you can stay in your groups if you feel better that way. But there are many ways that you can contribute to Fedora, both engineering and non-engineering. So here's what I'm going to have you do. Break into the small groups for, actually, we are going to do it differently. This time we're actually going to stand up and move to different parts of the room based on which of these topics are interesting to you. So if you're interested in design, we'll do this. So we have 6 topics. So we'll do one group in the back, one group in the front, one group in the back, one group in the front, one group in the back, one group in the front. So we'll do packaging, design, additions. So that's actually like the Fedora Linux. You can actually have different flavors or customizations of the operating system. If you want to do astronomy or make music, you can actually customize like the install so that you have it. So you have all this software for music production or for astronomy on your system. There's content, so press releases, community updates. There's marketing, which is promoting and advocating for Fedora and Linux. There's outreach strategies, and there's user Q&A. So, forum moderation, chat room support, troubleshooting. So we narrowed down that whole mind map into these 6 areas. So think of a little bit on which of these is interesting to you. And then for your group, choose someone who can be a note taker. I don't think we have sticky notes, so you can use a phone, or if you have your own notepad and paper, that's fine too. And then you can also reference the Fedora documentation on docs.fedoraproject.org if you want, but that's not required for this activity. So what you're going to do in your teams is based on the topics, you're going to do the breakouts, and then think around how would you actually land a contribution? Like how would you, if you wanted to work on something like creating a new Linux flavor for Fedora, or you wanted to do UI UX for Fedora websites and the design end, how do you think your group would do that? What are the steps you'd look for, like start to finish? And you don't have to know the answers here. This is really kind of an exploration activity to think through, how would you do this in a project like a Linux operating system? So we're going to go ahead and do the breakouts. We're going to get up and move around. And also don't forget to choose a spokesperson for your group. We'll try to do some share outs at the end, even though we'll probably be coming right up on time. So let's go ahead and do this. If you are interested in packaging, we can go to the back side of this section. If you're interested in the design side, you can come to this front section over here. Additions, center in the back. Content, center in the front. Marketing, on this side in the back. And if you're interested in user Q&A, this side in the front. One more time is packaging on the back side of this left, well, your right, my left side. Design in front. Linux editions, center back. Content, center front. Marketing, right back. User Q&A, right front. I'll give you some prompts before we jump in. The arrangement in 10 minutes. Okay. Yeah. I definitely see some, I think I see some favorites in the room here. So because some of these groups are really big, you can also maybe split into rows or smaller groups in your bigger groups if you're in one of the really large areas. So what we're going to do, we're going to take about 7 or 8 minutes. We got 10 minutes left for the workshop here. So we'll take 7 or 8 minutes, talk amongst yourselves, and think around, like, how would you try to approach this in a distro? I will be walking around. If you have questions or you feel totally lost, just raise your hand, and I will come by, and you can flag me down, and I will help you out. But we'll take, it's 11:29. We'll come back at 11:36. So that's 7 minutes. We'll be right back. wrap the last conversations. For the groups that are in the back, we'll have you guys all move forward back up to the front of the room. If you are sitting in a back row, if you can move yourself up to the front, we'll do the last readout. Make sure your group has a spokesperson as well. All right, start bringing it back up. We're going to start having a, let's see how much time. We can have some folks come up on the main stage here too. So I know there's a lot of smaller groups in some of the larger topics, but if we can have, we'll try to have 6 people come up from each group, and we have one of the handheld microphones for the event staff. We have a handheld, perfect. All right. So if we can have a rep from the design team, do we have folks from the design? Anyone that would want to come up on the stage and share a little bit on design? Same for packaging. I know that was a big group, but can we find one person to come up and share a little bit from their group around what the packaging conversation was? Have someone from the additions group? Once you've identified a spokesperson, packaging, excellent. We have one for packaging. Do we have someone for design? Do we have someone for content? Anyone user Q&A that we can have as our spokesperson? Marketing. Marketing, we should have someone who's really ready to jump on that one. And additions. 3 minutes? All right, we'll wrap. We'll make this really quick. We're at your design. All right, we got design, we got packaging. We're going to go ahead and start on the stage because we're right at time. If you're one of the groups that's not up here yet, find a spokesperson and send one person up here from your groups. I know it's tough because these are some big groups. All right. So let's start with packaging. So you can answer one or both of these questions, and make sure this is on. Can we get a sound check? Are we good on the handheld? Try?
Headphones.
Ah. All right. So the questions I have for everyone coming up, and you can answer one or both. Try to keep it to 1 or 2 sentences because we're right on time. What issues or problems came up? Or what was a striking idea or something that was really interesting that came up that you might not have thought about before?
Okay, so for my team packaging, we had a sample case study. So in the process of building a music player, we looked at certain things such as picking a distro, checking the code base, seeing what you could improve or add. And also speaking to other teams because you need collaboration, right? And in order to build packages, we chose Fedora as the flavor of the distro. And we decided to go with Flatpak to automatically update the apps.
Flatpak emerged again. All right.
Yeah. So
next time I'll have to remember. I'll have to cover that part. Awesome.
So the other issues that arose was more of choosing what to probably contribute to, going through the code base. Those were certain things. And then some of them issues will be more of performance, but with us, the distro we went was Fedora, so we're cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for being our packaging spokesperson. We'll do a lightning round here. So the questions again are what issues or problems came up, and what was something or an interesting idea, something that you wouldn't have thought about before?
Okay. Hi, everybody. My team was for marketing, and so there were some things that we discussed, and one of the things we discussed was about the type of community, and we realized that to market Fedora, the Linux, and all of that, we will have to do a non-dev and a dev community, but it's like a two-in-one community. So because if you're marketing Fedora, some people that are just coming into the tech space or the dev space may not really understand what Linux is all about. So we have to market it in a way that they can understand. Then we talked about ambassadorship, where people are like spokespersons to explain what Fedora Linux does. And then we talked about how to like express um, the Linux aspect being better than the Windows when it comes to the space, when it comes to the updating software, how fast it is. Then we spoke about the choosing the right audience and presentation ethics. That has to do with when you're presenting to people, people want to listen to you, people want to understand what Fedora is. And also events and collaboration. When you're collaborating with people, like the way Fedora is collaborating with Oscar to speak about this, then the whole events, just making sure that people understand, or like more, this is more like having a one-on-one conversation with the devs and the non-devs. So that's like what we spoke about for marketing.
Excellent. Thanks for coming up here. We get some round of applause for our packaging and our marketing folks. Awesome. All right, so what's our next group we have?
Content.
Content. All right. So what were some challenges or solutions or interesting things that came up in discussion?
Okay, so while we looked through Fedora Workstation, the question came up, what is Fedora Workstation? How do we get to understand this? And we began to realize that before we get to talk about Fedora, we need to understand what exactly Fedora Workstation was all about. And then we talked about the workstation, how it could help developers, and we tried to see how we could bring other stuff in so that people can be able to draw like a parallel, like two lines and say, okay, this is it, this is it. This is how it works in some other sphere. So we were going to be creating a release document that talked about Fedora. So there's going to be like a headline that gets people to understand that, okay, they can supercharge their creativity with Fedora Workstation. And we also got to talk about like the benefits and how it can help them to make their work much more faster, while also looking at the features that they can easily incorporate into their daily routine as a team. So this was what we looked at. This is what we talked about for the Fedora Workstation.
Excellent. Thanks for coming up. Round of applause for content. Who do we have next?
All right, I'm representing design.
Design.
So basically, I think the only issue that came up is understanding that design is not just visualization or all about beauty. So we need to start from researching or first understanding the goal. What do we really want to achieve? Right. Then from there, we go into research. From research, we get our feedback and put it together on how to implement the experience, right, on the Fedora system. Then from there, we know we need to collaborate with the marketing team as well, because we need to do some little of branding and a couple of other stuff right there. So we get to understand that design won't just be about visualization. Design is about research and implementation, right? And we need to collaborate with every team or section on the
Great point.
process.
Excellent. Thank you. Round of applause for design.
Editions.
Additions. All right.
All right, so we talked about making a special edition of kind of like a mini Fedora for a wearable device or something like that, something like a micro device and stuff. So we talked about the specifications we need. We need somehow to have I/O in it, like I/O communications, and maybe other sensors. Like we talked about, like since there are smart devices around that can measure heart rate sensors and stuff, why don't you have a copy of that, something, a kind of functionality that works with Fedora on it. So we talked about it, and we talked about having the specifications laid out. So these are the specifications we need and stuff. Then we'll go ahead to write the documentation on how things are supposed to work and everything. Then we'll have to start from a starter package. You know what I mean? So when we start from the starter package and stuff like that, we can be able to build up from there. Then we'll create an open source repository where everyone within the group can contribute to it. Then we'll bring it, because I think you have to bring it to someone to actually clear it off. So we'll get to the clearance list. So when they look at it and they approve from it and everything, then we can now carry it on to like a marketing team or whoever is to like actually spread the word about it, so we can have more people come in and contribute. So that's what we thought about in editions.
Excellent.
So that's it. All right, thank you.
Thanks for coming up. Give it up. And fun fact, we actually do have a Fedora IoT edition that is meant for those kinds of like, maybe where it could be wearables, but lots of other projects like that. Just saying, there's a Fedora IoT edition. And our last group here.
Yeah, I'm representing the user Q&A group.
Q&A.
So we first discovered that we need to support Fedora users, and we searched for places where we can support such users. The first place we discovered was the Ask Fedora forum, which is more like Stack Overflow. So in these places, we can answer users' questions and also ask questions. We also try to streamline those questions and group them into Q&A, so that if anyone has any similar question, they can just run through the forum and see that that particular question has been answered and they don't need to ask it again. So there are also other forums we're going to use to help Fedora users. That's the IRC channel and also the user mailing list. So these forums, we're going to use them to help Fedora users so that their questions are answered on time. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, we can go to the last slide and we're going to wrap up. So, well, first, I want to just can we get a round of applause for the event staff and all of their excellent patience and help with getting everything running today. Thank you for bearing with us with all the technical challenges. And we get a slide change to the last one. Just want to give one last, if not, you can also find all the slides here. Okay. Here we go. So you can find me on my socials as well here. Always happy to talk about Fedora Linux and all the things that we talked about today. Also, if you had some notes, feel free to tweet them at me and share them on Twitter. I'd love to see, I know we had so many folks here today, which was awesome. I'd love to see what your groups all were working on and talking about. So thank you all for coming and enjoy the rest of OSCA Fest. Thank you. Thanks. I'm so sorry I ran over.
Hi everyone. Okay. Hi everyone. Please let's move to the next hall. But please let's try to be as orderly as possible because this workshop already started. And please don't forget to drop your headset on your seats. Thank you.